Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Not For Broadcast. Avery and I just got back from vacation. Avery, how was your vacation? Did you have a fun time?
Yeah.
Did you have a good time, Avery? So, for those of you guys who don't know, me, Avery, Purge, Slex, Tsunami, and a mutual friend of ours from BTS, a guy called Rob. We all stayed at Purge's place for Avery and I stayed for a week. Some other people stayed for 4 or 5 days, and just kind of hung out, played board games, did two outdoor activities, which I think is pretty good for a group of gamers. Celebrated Purge's birthday, unbeknownst to us. Is there anything you want to share, Avery,
That
from your times
was a
together?
private trip, man. Why am I going to share that with the public?
Well, it's not going to be that private because you're going to give at least the group photo that you took to Priscilla so she can put it up on the podcast so people can see. But
I have not edited any photos from that trip.
you don't need to edit it. Let's be real. I'm
mm,
sure it was a great photo, raw. Okay, you could just leave it as is. Avery brought his camera, got some good pictures. Maybe we'll see some. Maybe we won't. We'll see. He's a mysterious man, very private man. Keeps his cards close to the chest. So there's nothing you want to talk about.
I mean, it was a fun trip, man.
What was the most fun you had during the week-long ordeal?
I don't know if that's PG for I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I always enjoy hanging out with Slacks because I feel like I never get to hang out with him because he's the one guy at events that he's there, but he's like never there.
Yeah, he's always working.
I feel like I get to spend time with most of you guys, at least a little bit at lands, but I feel like I never see him because he's always the busiest and he has his 10 jobs and he's on stage and he's omega high energy. But yeah, I mean, that guy is basically the same normally as he is on camera. So
He just about 20% more deranged than he is on camera.
It's actually
especially
insane.
with Avery enabling him, which Avery really does enable him quite a lot.
I don't enable him. I think we we enable each other if anything, but he's very loud. And yeah.
It was Purge's place was definitely very quiet once Slacks left. But I think we can all agree we played a board game called Tales of Arthurian Knights. I think that night that we played that, it's kind of a D&D light sort of thing where you're just rolling and doing quests and just making choices and reacting to things that happen. You're knights and you're out there trying to create a name for yourself through either villainy or heroic deeds or romantic deeds. And it was a good time. I think you put a group of entertainers in that sort of setting, it's gonna be fun because you get what you put into it,
Yeah, I almost could have streamed it. Would have been a good
almost
IRL stream, but
almost.
I mean, I'm not saying we could have, but we almost could have. 90% of it was stream terms of service. I did enjoy the fact that Slacks actually injured his rib because he laughed so hard.
Yeah. Yeah, he did that. He left from the trip injured because
he said he was laughing so hard he keeled over and he heard a crack and now his chest hurts to breathe ever since. So I consider that a victory. I don't know. It was a chill trip, man. I don't know. It's nice to hang out with people that you normally only work with. So
yeah,
success.
Good vibes. We did 2 outdoor activities. We actually drove to a place called Devil's Lake and went on a hike up little ways, got good views of the lake, and then we also went disc golfing. 4 of us went disc golfing on the last day together, and then we just played Slay the Spire. We played what else did we play? 7 Wonders. We played some submarine game that I don't remember what it was called.
Captain Sonar.
Captain Sonar.
and we played
I
Arc
played a
Nova,
game of Terraforming Mars, Arc Nova. Yeah, we played a couple rounds of Arc Nova.
which I demolished.
Avery did demolish. Avery has played uh, quite a lot of that game with, if any of you guys remember Hotbid. There was a period of time where Avery and Hotbid were playing a lot of Arc Nova online against each other. And
I
Avery, of
almost
course, Avery tried to downplay it going into it. He's like, I don't
that
really
sucks.
remember the game so much. Like, I
That's
don't
so
know if
true.
I'm actually going to be good. I was just like, this is a bunch of horse shit that he's feeding us right now. Man did demolish. Man did demolish. He
I
won
did
both
end up
games.
demolishing, but I feel like a lot of it came back to me very quickly. But going in, I felt like I did not remember a lot. I wasn't lying to you guys. Like I was like, I don't really remember all the rules. And then after 30 minutes, I was like, okay, now I remember all the rules. And then I
Yeah.
demolished. But I was very tempted to message Ken today and boot up the old 1v1s, but I don't know if I'm ready for that life again.
Yeah, it's a addiction you just can't quite get. If anybody else has, if you have heard of Arc Nova and you want to try it out, I think you said something. You described the game, and I felt very similar. And I think Hopbit says the same thing. It gives a similar itch that that Dota does. The various elements, the complexity of the game. It's it it definitely scratches that little area of the brain quite well. But that was our vacation. It was good times. We had a lot that happened during the vacation. Avery, we had to submit our voice lines before we went to vacation. The deadline was like a week and a half ago. I submitted, I think, 6 or 7 lines that all got rejected. Quite sad about that, but I guess eventually we ended up with our lines in the game. Priscilla will be nice enough to play our lines if you want them. They're out there. TB, 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 TB. The Wisdom Shrine spawns in minutes 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, 50.
Gay bow bow. Well, hey everybody, hop on in.
Are you happy with your lines, Avery?
Yeah, I mean, as much as ever. Like, I'm gonna be honest. I feel like 2 or 3 years ago, I started submitting lines that I don't know how to put this. Like, basically, the lines that end up selling in Dota are the toxic ones. Let's be honest.
Yes. The more obnoxious and toxic they are, the better they will sell.
And I feel like I submitted a bunch of those in the past, and I never got fucking one in. I never got a line close to being in that was even sarcastically toxic.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
But every year, there's a lot in there that are toxic. Let me tell you that. So I don't know what the fuck that's about. So at this point, I'm just like submitting lines I think are fun that I'm going to spam and like, whatever. If people want to buy them, awesome. To support me, that's cool. But I don't know. There's some game with these lines that I will never win, and I have conceded. I tip my hat to those who are far better at this than I am, and I will see you on the Arc Nova and the Dota battlefield, or I will seek my revenge.
I think I think it was particularly telling that I submitted a voice line very similar to one of the ones that Slacks got in. The "Oh God, we're all gonna die, run for your lives." I submitted a voice line very similar, sort of war themed, and I got the feedback that it was too obnoxious. And I'm convinced that Slacks has somehow managed to trick his way into whoever is deciding the rules on this and judging the voice lines. I think they legitimately do not believe that Slacks can be less obnoxious than the voice lines he submits. I think he's somehow gaslit them that he can't be normal because every voice line he submits is obnoxious. So eventually they're just like, well, I guess we have to take this one. But yes, I do feel similarly that I'm just like, how did I get like so many voice lines kicked back? And I was just like, maybe they're really tightening the rules this year. And then I perused through some of the lines this morning. I was like, no, 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 no. There's definitely what I really disliked about it was the fact that I try to get a little creative with it every year. And I do a little multi-tracking and stuff, and like I have fun with that. And I did one this year with the TP song, and it gets in, but the initially got rejected, and I had to cut it down. I feel like it was a much more interesting and fun line before, but I had to cut like half the tracks down of the song, and then they accepted it, and I was pretty disappointed with that. But it is what it is, you know. Obviously, it's a massive system, and ultimately, it's a bonus for us. So you know, can't really complain about some money that we're going to be getting from it. So thanks Valve once again for letting us have voices in the game. That's pretty cool. I thought what was interesting was that this year they introduced the community broadcast, which I thought was super cool, for some of the smaller languages, Filipino, Ukrainian, and Portuguese, where they put in three different voice lines to represent the entire language, and I assume it is split amongst the whole group, the whole broadcast that is broadcasting in those various languages, as I assume how it went. I thought that was interesting because that was actually my original suggestion to Valve at, what was it, TI 10 when we did the negotiations. Is that the first year? Or TI 11, I think? TI 11 is when we did the negotiations for a pay raise bump. And one of the suggestions I put it in was to have a chest full of the various caster voice lines like they have been doing that would like are pulled from epic moments of history of the game and stuff. And I suggested they do that, and then just it's the money is just pooled, right? So it's like doesn't matter whose voice gets in, everybody on the broadcast gets to share. I thought that was a pretty cool idea. Valve just one-upped me and said, okay, everybody's going to have their own individual voice line. We'll just let the market decide who creates the best product. But with the community ones, it seems they went to that kind of idea, which I think is really cool. I'm glad they're supporting the smaller languages. If you check out those packs and you like them, I highly suggest you buy them because, frankly, that money is probably going to go a lot farther than it would because obviously it's smaller languages, so they're probably not making nearly as much money. So yeah, check that out. Avery, did you check out any of the voice lines? Have you
I
heard
just
any
got
of the voice
back
lines?
yesterday, man. Like I have seen some of them, yes, because I was watching streams and stuff. So
Okay.
I've seen the ones people are spamming and all that.
What are the ones that people are spamming stand out to you that you liked
You
or
want me to sell
disliked a
other
lot?
people voice lines? Like
I'm just curious.
hell
I'm
no,
just
brother. I
curious.
ain't advertising shit. Uh, I mean, apparently
Well,
Neil
obviously
owns
it's not
like
your voice lines or my voice lines.
yeah, Neil owns half the subreddit. Apparently, I don't know what the fuck is going on there. This guy is just the meme master.
I mean,
Kudos to him. Boy's a
man's
beast.
been making memes and content for quite some
Yep.
time for Dota 2. So I
Yep.
I actually really like that Tsunami's getting that love because I think he gets overshadowed by the fact that people look at Slacks as like, oh, he's the content guy. And every funny bit of content that comes out, people are like, oh, it must be a Slacks content, you know, when, you know, half the content that's going out is probably related to Neil in some ways. And he doesn't really get that shout
Well,
out.
he
So
doesn't like being in the spotlight, so
yeah,
it's
sure he
his
doesn't.
choice.
As a stage host and desk host who specifically
Yeah, but he
does
doesn't.
bits that
I feel like he doesn't publicly attach his name to a lot of the content he makes as
yes,
much as Slacks does. So that's his
that's true.
choice, right? He could advertise it a lot more,
Mm.
but he has his reasons. So yeah, he looks like he's doing great. I did not see any of Jenkins's this year, so I don't know what he ended up submitting.
I listened to them. They were okay. But yeah, they haven't really gained traction. I think it is really interesting how like sometimes I'll hear lines that are like I think are really funny to spam, but then they just don't take off, you know. It really is, I think, about like early adopters and that those people play certain lines in pubs and then other people hear those and like that's really tilting or whatever. And then there's a snowball effect, you know?
Yep, it's random, man.
Valve, over the course of this little time that we've been away, they put in the Quadro's Curiosities before they gave us what we have now for TI, which was free cosmetics for people if you play the game. I feel like this should. I feel like this doesn't really need to be an event. It just kind of feels like something that should always have been in the game. Is always in the game. Like technically, we've always had the like for 12 years or something like that. That if you play games, there's a chance you get a drop. And usually it's just trash that goes in the bin. And it, for my experience and everything that I've seen, seems like most of Quadro's curiosities are continued to be trash. But every once in a while, there's that 1% somebody rolls an Arcana. But yeah, Valve bribing people to play more Dota. As a result, we have our highest concurrent players in quite some time. Is Dota back? Do you feel like the game's more alive than ever, Avery?
No, not really. But kudos to whoever is fucking playing. I don't know who it. I don't know who it is. Um, I mean, the game is not going to feel back if the event slash public reaching side isn't reinflated. It doesn't really matter what the actual player numbers are. The feel will not be there. Those are
Hmm.
two different things. I mean, the game can be doing great, and the players base can be doing great. And for a 25, almost 25-year-old game, that's fucking amazing. So I'm not complaining. I'm not telling them how to run the game. But if you're asking for a public reaction side of, oh, Dota's back, it's huge, it's exciting, blah blah blah, like if you don't reinflate the public interest, which is pretty much just events they poured into the game, like the Dire Tide or the fucking Labyrinth or whatever. It's not some big cosmetic sale that attracts attention, or it's not a competitive scene event that attracts attention, then I mean, it's pretty hard to be like, oh, my interest in Dota public side wise is reinvigorated. That said, I think a lot of the stuff they've done in the last year or two has been more client side, just like improving the actual game. The whole event they did was more not like we want to build an event to attract people to Dota, but I feel like that whole thing was, Crownfall was more let's build an event to let the people who are already playing have fun, which is honestly kind of weird because a lot of game companies are not going to do that kind of thing. Like if they're going to invest time in building something, they want it to attract more people to the game, not attract the people who are already in the game more. Obviously, these are tools to sell, so you can argue that Valve, honestly, like I don't understand what the fuck Valve's goal is with Dota anymore. I feel like I used to at least pretend I did, and I don't anymore. I'm going to admit it. And I think more people need to admit it. I think maybe Valve should just admit it. Like, what is the goal with Dota 2 right now? The only goal I see is to just maintain the player base. Fine
Yes.
goal. That is a fine goal. If all of your actions are working towards maintaining the player base because it generates a decent amount of money every year and you're generating a certain amount of activity within Steam itself, I'm sure the Dota player base, they have numbers of how much revenue it generates through Steam by just getting people in the system. People are going to buy other games in Dota. They're going to play other stuff. Maybe it's not the highest conversion of any game out there, but there's some conversion. If your goal is to just maintain the player base, whatever, man. Nothing I say after this matters at all. But if your goal is anything outside of that, like what the fuck is going on,
Okay,
right?
what
Like
would be those
what?
other goals?
I
Growing the
mean,
game, obviously, that's not really attracting new players.
yeah, that ship has sailed. I'm not here
That's
stressing about
gone.
that. In theory, you could do it, but there is no financial world in which any game dev company does that at this point,
Hmm.
unless there is one exception. That exception is a world where Dota 3 will exist.
Right. You
And
introduce just a whole new game on top of
yes,
the IP that is different enough and exciting enough that it draws a whole new player base
or
in to
I
try
mean,
it out.
not even necessarily that. Valve has done that. I mean, not third iterations, but I consider like the Left 4 Dead 2 launch, post
Yeah.
Left 4 Dead 1, an example of you don't have to remake the game into something completely new. You can
Yeah.
take the game and build on it, add some new features, expand the pool. Like that could happen to Dota where you have enough of we're adding 10 new heroes, we're updating the game, we're rebalancing it, we're porting it to a better engine. That could be Dota 3. It doesn't mean the game itself changes that fundamentally. Just like it's a big enough update that they resell as Dota 3. And in that world where that happens, then attracting new players does become valuable, right? Because then you want to have some sort of transitionary event, including the release of this game, and like, double those active player numbers, bring a bunch of new people in and resell them for another 10 years. That is the one world where attracting new players actually does pay off, and I could see them doing it. But barring that, which, what are the odds of that happening? 0.5%, I'll give it.
Sure.
Unless they are like the best company in the world at hiding something that big. Um, Outside of that, your only other goals are the public perception of the game,
Mm-hmm.
which is like the competitive scene, the events, the monetary systems. And the only reason you would try and improve that is if it has a direct effect on the amount of money you're making off the game every year. Um, from what I know, I actually don't think it's that correlated. I think the public thinks it is, and I think in reality, it's probably not. Everything I learned from my time in the scene and my interactions with Valve is that you can have TI be $100 million, you can have TI be $1 million, and their capability to sell the hats is the exact fucking same. So
They
they're
proved
not.
that with the Esports Pure Battle Pass that they did
Yes.
in TI 12,
Yep.
right? Where they
So
said, okay, you really think that it's about esports? Let's go ahead and give a Battle Pass that doesn't have any cosmetics attached to it and see how much it sells.
I mean, I do think
And
it's
it
not a
sold
100 to 0 thing
terribly.
because I think they're conflating like, short-term interest with long-term stickiness, and I think you do lose some long-term stickiness when your competitive scene dies. Like there are going to be
Yeah.
a lot of people's interest wanes, they leave, they no longer buy hats because they're just not even paying attention to the game anymore.
Right. People are a little bit more simpler than they claim to be. Sometimes it is just some reputation and prestige does go a long ways
Yep.
in a game. And Dota 2 is actually a very good example of that within the Southeast Asian scene. Is the thing I've always heard is the Southeast Asian organizations, for example, make a lot of money off of the mobile games, and then they turn around and use that money and support teams in Dota 2 because there's prestige in being in Dota. It adds a lot to your image as an organization to field a Dota 2 team. Makes you look a lot more professional and, again, a lot more prestige that comes with it. But, not really that much of a money maker and never really has been.
So I mean, I don't know. Like, what are your goals with the game? At this point, just make the game as good as you can because it's more of a passion project at this point to like keep making Dota and it's fun and a lot of people play it. And I'm sure the people who work on it at Valve love the game, and so they're incentivized to keep making it as good as it can. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, honestly. I mean, uh, in some ways, it's refreshing if that's the truth because there's enough corporate greed in the world and there's enough games and monetization scams and all this grift bullshit where it's just like we're just doing stuff to make as much money as possible, and Dota very clearly did not go that route, so I
Mm.
respect that a lot. But obviously when you do that after you built the prestige and the camaraderie and the events so much, it is gonna be a letdown in people's minds. Like you feel like it's heading on a downward trajectory, even if that's not true. I don't know.
So
It
in
would honestly, you know what my conclusion out of all of this is that Valve should just lie more. Like genuinely, they should just
like
lie.
lie about what?
About cool shit that's coming. Just fucking lie. Just because it doesn't really matter. Like you're not going to do it anyway, and nothing's going to change. The people who play while you're improving the game are going to keep playing whether you release whatever cool event or not. Just say Ags Lab 8 is coming, It's coming. It's like you don't
Just
even have to
around
give
the
it
corner,
in the
guys.
next year or two. It's coming. And then maybe
I
you
think
release it,
you
maybe you
might,
don't. Who fucking cares? Just
if
lie.
Valve were to announce something like that, I think our editor Priscilla might overdose on copium if they say Ag's Labyrinth is coming.
Yeah.
Don't worry, just keep waiting.
But you know what Valve does instead? They just don't tell you anything.
And then you just
Like,
make up in your mind what to hope for.
exactly. So what's the fucking difference, I argue? I mean, in one case, they're lying to you, and the other, you're lying to yourself. Just save the community the effort of lying to themselves, Like, everybody sits here all day, and I know there's some big event. I know there's some Ags Lab coming, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, they don't say anything. So the community just lies to themselves. Instead, Valve could just be like, yeah, sure, it's coming. And then 2 years down the road, be like, oh, we had to scratch the project. Sorry, boys, Instead, they just release a Crownfall out of like fucking nowhere.
Yes.
And then there's
I
like,
had heard
what the fuck is
through
that?
the grapevine that at some point in time, Valve's their outlook on PR, public relations, was it's best not to like really give them any promises or whatever, because if you don't actually hit that deadline or whatever, then the community riots and they go
Yeah, it's
insane on
very
you.
clear. It's
But
super
but
clear
it's
what
funny
their
enough that
policy is.
like the community, even if you don't say anything, the community will still be mad and fed up
Yeah,
because they made up in their mind something that
exactly.
they're
That
promised.
is Dota's not like some other game. Like the promise was already made in Dota. You've already established this promise of it will be patched over the course of a year. There will be a general big event within the year. There will be some
Mm.
TI event. So now you're going to under deliver by default unless you just lie. Like just go fucking lie, dude. There's no downside anymore. I'm telling you. It's and then maybe after you lie, you'll be like, yeah, maybe we can do this, you know? And then you will. And then you'll look like amazing if you deliver. And if you don't, it's in the same fucking boat. I mean, what's the fucking difference? Obviously, they're never going to do this, but
Well,
that's
I
the
guess
point we're at.
the question is do you feel like you were lied to when they did the Crownfall blog and the update, and they said that we're going to be putting more effort into making game events, and they put out Crownfall, and people really really liked it, and people were like, okay, this is really cool. And I remember we talked about this. I was like, okay, I can't really judge Crownfall until it's done, and even once it's done, like when is the next event? Like how often are we talking about? And I'm gonna bring up this tweet from Saberlight from August 4th. Can't believe we're getting a real battle pass. A bunch of emojis in there. Valve said they want to focus on other things like Crownfall, but there has been nothing since, which must mean that they are trying to surprise us with a huge battle pass. More emojis. Can't wait. Followed up by a follow-up tweet when Quadro's Curios came out. It was all for Quadro's Curios. I knew it. A huge patch. Dota updates are the best. Obviously, extremely sarcastic tweets from Saberlight trying to push Valve for more content. Do you feel disappointed that it's been a little bit since we had Crownfall? Now TI is around. Some people were thinking maybe we're going to get a battle pass. I never believed that for a second. I don't think we're ever going to get a battle pass ever again. We got, which is a bit of content, nothing amazing. I feel like Quadro's Curios is them just kind of giving out cosmetics and wrapped up in a fancy ribbon. I don't know. What do you think?
Okay, so I'm not disappointed, but the problem is that Dota players don't care about any of this shit. That's the truth. That there's a very vocal minority that cares, and the absolute majority don't give an actual fuck. Like, even arguably the best thing Valve ever made for Dota, which was Agslab, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure like 75% plus Dota players never fucking touched the thing. I
Yeah.
don't know the exact number, but it's freaking high. It's really high. Never even touched it. And I'm pretty sure like 80 or 90% maybe played it for like 5 hours or less and then never again. So if you are looking at a time and energy investment for Valve employees' time to make something that big and complex, that's awesome. That is probably the most beloved thing in like Dota custom game or content history. And 80 to 90% of people who are playing your game on a daily basis effectively never touch it. What the fuck are we doing here? Like, how can you make an argument that we should do this every year or we should replicate this? And I mean, maybe there's some argument of like, well, the general excitement bleeds into the population even if they don't play it. But Valve doesn't operate on stuff like that. They look at data, they look at time investment, they look at how many people use a system. It's the same thing with the battle pass. Like they literally stated some number, right, in the blog post or whatever, that they're like 75% or whatever amount of Dota players don't even level the battle pass, or like they'll
Yeah.
buy it and level it to level 1 and never touch it, or they don't buy it at all. It's a very high percentage. So you're looking at products that people have told Valve they don't want. If you're in the vocal minority and you fucking love it, sucks for you. Like, I feel you. That sucks. I never fucking liked the battle pass. I felt like it was just a money grab, honestly. Like, the cosmetics were cool. I bought a couple of them to like small levels, but I was never
Mm,
in that club of like, I'm gonna level this to 1,000 and I need all of this
yeah.
collector shit. And like, you have to recognize that you are in a minority, and Valve almost I say almost, they basically never cater to the minority, no matter how vocal they are. They look at the large array of data and go, who is this actually helping? And if you look at their arguments and rationale for everything they've done for Dota, time and time again, they have stated we want to do things that help the majority of the player base, even if they're not vocalized that much, like banning accounts or change or communication system or
Mm.
the setting systems, right? Like I'm not saying
Matchmaking improvements do improve everybody's life. Not certain if they've hit the mark on that
yeah, we
one,
can debate
but
whether
I
they
do
did
agree
it
with
good enough, but I'd
largely,
argue
yes.
that's a very difficult thing to hit. But
Sure.
these are still things that, like, for example, when they updated, look at how far like the settings in Dota 2 have come, for example, right? If you go
Yes.
back 5 or
Yeah,
6 years
yeah,
ago,
yeah.
I mean, you can do probably 2x, 3x as many things in the settings, and the ease of execution is way easier. There's never any fucking like that vocal minority that's where's my battle pass, where's my hats, where's my hats. They're never there. Like, oh man, they have really made my Dota experience better over the last 5 years by making all these changes that no other game fucking gets. No other game gets this shit. So, like, that is a change that helps 90% of the players, as opposed to a battle pass that is good for 10%. Like, you can't really argue with this shit. It's just not reasonable. You're going to be really upset if you're one of those guys that's in the minority who actually loves this stuff, but that is life. Valve, you have to recognize Valve as a company does not operate on that, and they're never going to probably. And just move on. I don't know what else to tell you.
I do
I
think that
think the
there
Battle Pass
are
was a whale predatory system that made Valve a lot of money for a lot of effort and did relatively almost nothing for the health of the game, did almost nothing for the improvement of the game, and basically took up a huge amount of their time. And if we went back in time and had all the energy and time that went into that put into like custom games or improving the game or patching it faster, I'd argue Dota would be in a better place. So am I sad that the Battle Pass is gone? No. I hated the Battle Pass, and I'll stand by that forever. And I think I don't know what it is. It's people chasing some like dopamine high of getting new hats that are cool. I mean, yeah, hats are cool in Dota. I fucking get it. They're awesome. But like, I'm one of those guys who doesn't give a shit. And guess what? 70-80% of the Dota community also doesn't give a shit. That's the reality.
uh
At least to an
so
extent that it's worth the time and energy.
there are a couple things that I want to rebut there because when it comes to Valve, have always been the company to focus on the majority rather than the minority. I would argue that they have a very elitist attitude uh, on various things. And one of those would be, say, esports. I think they've had a very elitist attitude. They've catered a lot of Dota's change has happened. I think where the general trend of Dota has been good for the broad uh, player base, but obviously a lot of their balancing for long periods of time was based off of what was happening at the 1% level, right? The idea that it trickles down, which may or may not be true. I don't really know.
I should
Uh,
rephrase it now that you bring this up because I think
yes.
saying they've never done that is an incorrect statement. I would like to retract that. I think what I would rather say is they have definitely catered to a minority in the past, but I think eventually over time they dislike doing that and they get rid of
Yes.
it. Like they really dislike in the end catering to a minority. Maybe not at the start, but like it happened with players. They catered to players for a long time. And after 5 or 6 years of doing it, around TI like 8 to 10, they were like, "This fuck this shit. Like, we're just not gonna do it anymore." Like
Yeah.
they have done it in the past, but over time, I feel like if you look at Valve's decisions in games, they hate doing it. Like they start out maybe doing it, they'll do it for certain things, but over time, they eventually get rid of doing that because they don't like the interactions and it becomes very almost I don't want to say parasocial. There's probably some other word for it, but like parasitic or they probably feel like it is a group sucking more energy and time from their company than they're getting out of it. Which it's like we're Valve.
I
Why the
think
fuck?
parasitic is
Yeah,
definitely
it's
the
like
view
yeah,
on.
they feel like this small minority is like a parasite on their company, and they have to keep catering to them. It's
Yeah.
like no, fuck you, and they just cut it off. And it's like, but the big cost like esports is dying. They're like, okay.
Yeah.
You good luck with that, That's basically what happened. So I would like to change my statement to that, but
Okay.
continue.
I want to go back really quickly to the Aghanum's Labyrinth thing. Um, I agree. Valve, obviously, they have way more insight into all of this. They're operating off this statistics. I would be really curious to know how many new players or players who haven't interacted with Dota in a really long time come back for something like Aghanim's Labyrinth. Obviously, it's not enough to make it worthwhile keeping the product. And I understand that. I do hope they keep trying to make stuff like that, because the biggest thing for me was that the custom games, right? Remember auto chess? Auto chess was a massive boon when it was at its peak for Dota. We had the highest numbers we ever had. That by itself is maybe meaningless because those people are interacting with auto chess. But I do think percentage of those people, they're in the Dota client, they try out Dota, right? I think it has to be good for the game in some regard. And I do think there is ways to interact with Dota in a more casual way that will bring people into the client that may get them playing a bit of Dota again, or maybe for the first time. And so I do really like, even though I actually hate all the games that they've done from Crownfall, I don't like any of them really. Vampire Slayers, which I mean, it was a copy of Vampire Slayers. Like I've watched them, I've played a million of those games. You know, like it was a good version of the game, but it was whatever to me. I do hope they keep doing those games because, again, I think it. I mean, my history of being in Warcraft 3 and interacting with the custom game scene there, like when you have things like that that draw your attention, it is very easy once you're in that area to all of a sudden go, oh, I'm going from playing, tower defenses to, oh, I'm going to play a game of Dota. I'm going to play a game of Orcs versus Elves, whatever it is, right? So I do hope they keep doing stuff like that. But moving forward, they had this post about the Battle Pass, and they changed some things this time around, Avery. They changed the split. So the split has been 50-50 for talent voice lines. Now it is still 50% for the talent and for the teams, but now an additional 30% goes to the prize pool. So a little bit of a boost on the prize pool. We'll see how much it actually affects things, but I'm going to go back to another tweet from Saberlight on August 10th. He did a trio of tweets. In the past, Valve made all the content for the Battle Pass, plus the prize pools were already super high, so it made complete sense that only 25% of the Battle Pass purchase it went towards the prize pool. Now, however, except for stickers, it's the teams that create all the content. So it makes sense that the cut goes up to 50% to 75%, raising TI prize pool from 3 to a respectable 5 mil. Everyone wins. TI is by far the biggest tournament. Pros are happy. Valve can focus on not doing battle passes. A little shot at Valve, of course, can't hold himself back. And TI teams have even more incentive to make their fan bundle great. So I guess in some ways they did actually go through with that idea. Maybe they already had it in mind. I don't know if that is actually going to change the prize pool that much, but it's a nice idea. I don't know if that actually means that the teams are going to do a better job with their passes. I would highly disagree with that. I think the 50% that they're getting is enough incentive for them to try and make their team bundles as good as they can. I don't think the extra money going to the TI prize pool really makes a damn difference there, but I think theoretically it's a good idea.
I'm sure somewhere like the Dota team reads Saberlight's tweets and structures their strategy for the year based on that. And they're like, man, this guy, he just knows what's up. He's like saving us so much strategic conference room energy. It's amazing. We don't have to have meetings. It's always good to step back and ask yourself, like, I'm not shitting on Saberlight. I think he makes a lot of fine points. He makes a lot of stupid points.
I appreciate that he is one of the pros outwardly saying anything at all,
sure.
and having an opinion about things.
It's good to voice your opinion.
Yeah.
But it's also good to step back and ask yourself, do I have as much perspective or information? The answer is usually no. And then voice your opinion.
All right, fair enough. Nothing else you want to say on the split or anything like that?
No, I mean, Valve can always make the TI prize pool whatever the fuck they want at any point. So
okay,
they have some reasons why they're not,
Next topic. focusing on the world of esports here. Game and Gladiators have reportedly lost their coach, CY, going into TI. Don't know the details of this, but all we know is that he hasn't been on the team for, I had a date somewhere, I've lost it, but it's been like a couple weeks at this point in time. He was removed from the Wikipedia list at some point in time. So troublesome signs for Game and Gladiators.
Not a positive sign. Put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows?
Let's actually preface this with there is also an event going on, the Fisher event. And I believe just this morning, they had a 13-minute GG against Team Falcons. Don't know if you saw that one.
I mean, I wouldn't wrap that in with it. I mean, every team's had a 13-minute GG in their history, you know.
Have they?
Yes, every team has.
Okay, how many have had them 2 weeks out from TI?
You'd probably be surprised, honestly. I don't know about officials, but like, there's been some teams that have won TI and they got booty stomped in scrims.
Sure.
Like they lost like every scrim going into that TI and lost in like 10 minutes and didn't even seem like they belonged there, and they got like top 3 or won it. So it's not always the worst thing. I don't know, man. That team is yeah, they're in a weird spot. I don't know what the fuck is going on, but this is probably, you know, Quinn's been super vocal about like this could be his last year in retiring. I think Aiden has said that as well, and I think some other players have said that, right? Like this could be Puppy's last official year. Feels like there's this generation this might be like their last rodeo. I think a couple Falcons players have also said that, but I feel like a lot of it is like contract dependent.
I've been hearing it for a number of years now, and then some juicy contract comes up, and they're like, "Shit, could I really make $250,000 in salary over the course of the year and any other vocation that I would get post esports?"
No,
probably not. Maybe not for the rest of your life. So
yeah, so I don't know. It could be like some of these guys step back. I think in the case of Gaiman, I think we can all feel from the outside like if this isn't a good TI run, that roster's almost automatically changing or disbanding to some capacity, right? Like if they get like bottom 8, we will not see those guys together again. If they get like a top 3, I don't know, man. I've seen crazier shit happen, but even then, I could see Quinn retire. I could see the team split up just for the sake of new stuff. Like it's hard to play together for that long and not get on each other's nerves, honestly. And that team's been together and they've been winning for a long time. So props to them. One of the best teams to ever play Dota 2, and they have another good chance here, but they lose their coach. They're going in and rough footing. They have not been super dominant this season. They've had some good highs, but nothing consistent. Tough spot to be in. I feel like their expected placement is probably around the middle of the pack on average, right? Like they could swing high, they could swing low, but you're probably expecting them to come in somewhere around that 6th to 12th on average. Could they get last? Absolutely. Could they, bomb out in groups and get last? Yeah. Could they get a top 2 or another 2nd or 3rd place if they really get a good momentum run? Yeah, absolutely. But I kind of expect them to be in that like 6th to 9th, whatever that middle range is. And I don't know. It would be a sad and quiet end for that squad that maybe made a lot of enemies along the way, but definitely won a lot of Dota and played a lot of really good Dota, whether you liked it or not. They played really well. They had a lot of synergy, and synergy is the hardest thing to find, I think. And I'll always stand by that. And once you get a group of 5 dudes who play well together, can't really replicate that. Like, it's just really difficult. Synergy counts for a lot.
There are very few teams in Dota's history that have been to a TI finals, let alone multiple. Right? You've got you've got the teams who obviously everybody OG Spirit, the guys who won it, right? Navi, the old Navi, they won the first one, but they're also in 2 more TI finals after that, which was incredibly impressive. I think Gaming Gladiators gets lost in that, right? Because the other one you're going to think of is LGD, of course. Like, oh, that legendary LGD roster, that was supposed to be a chance for China to reclaim the Aegis. But the fact that Gladiators managed to do it twice, didn't win either one. As a result, I think they're vastly overlooked. When it comes
Who was
to
the coach of LGD at TI 8? Was it Zhao 8?
I think it's been Zhao 8 since like 2017, 2016, something.
And has Zhao 8 been in the most TI finals?
That would not surprise me.
That would put him in 3, right? I don't think anybody else has been in 3. Well, I guess
He was at
Puppy has, but
yeah.
it would tie him, I guess.
I'm looking at it right now. So TI 2021. I don't see some other TIs here. But he was definitely in the TI 9.
Yeah, he was the coach at TI 8. So he's been in 3.
Why
but
is he not showing up in Liquipedia?
Has he been in a 4th? Was he the coach? I don't think he's been in a 4th. Has anybody been in 4? I don't think anybody's been in 4. It's probably him and Puppy tied for 3.
It's a good stat to have going into TI.
Yep.
Do your prep work, Avery. There'll be a 6 stat to pull out.
Has Kuro's been in 3?
Yes, Kuro was in TI 3.
He has 2 seconds.
TI 7 and TI 9.
Yeah, so he's also in there. But I don't think anybody's been in 4. Anyway, what is my point out of all this? I don't know. Kudos to them.
Well, in that list of people who have been in multiple TI finals, we forgot something, Avery, as talent are prone to fly by the seam of their pants and not do any research, not do any effort whatsoever in selling the stories of the players. We, of course, are forgetting that Soxa and Resolution have been in 2 TI finals. Did you know that, Avery? Did you know that? Were you aware of that?
Yeah.
No, I don't think you were.
Okay.
You definitely didn't know that because I heard from Reddit that you didn't know that.
Me?
There have been 2 posts. Yes, you were called out specifically for lacking this knowledge.
Some guy called me specifically while I was playing that event. Or I wasn't even... Whatever, man.
2 weeks ago, there was a post on Reddit. Has Pro Dota lost its personalities? Did you see this post?
I remember that one, yeah.
Yes. As the title says, I feel like Pro Dota has no personalities these days. Skill-wise, modern Dota pros are great, but there's nothing else about them. People have 0 personality compared to like OGs in this game. All legends have basically quit the pro scene. The new kids replacing them have no charm at all. Might sound like a boomer here. Change my mind. What are your first thoughts hearing that, Avery?
True.
You think that's true?
No. I think the core idea that modern day players are more skill and mechanic oriented and don't really care about promoting themselves is true.
Yes, I agree with that. Though I think they're actually better on camera than the old pros.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a caveat here. I think that has always been true.
Explain.
I don't think there was ever a generation that was more inclined to do promotion than just play and win. Only the incentives and the factors changed.
Yeah.
Initially, there was nothing to fucking play for. So players, you go to a fucking BTS event or you go to some like average Dota land, and of course you're gonna fuck around and hang out on camera and do content because the tournament's for fucking like $10,000. If you're playing for 10 fucking million, you're gonna buckle down a little bit more, right? You're gonna be less inclined to do extracurriculars if you don't have to. So that was a big factor that changed over time. And another big factor is I don't think a lot of the big star pro players that people go back to and go like, oh, I used to follow this guy and he was awesome. I don't think you followed them and you found them awesome because of their personality. No. Maybe a little, maybe it helped, but not because they did a fuck ton of content promotion and storyline telling. You did it because the game was built in a way where one guy could dominate more than he can now. And it ultimately led to him being more of a hero / protagonist in a lot of this natural storylines that Dota build. Dota is a really interesting game because every game of Dota naturally builds a storyline. It sets people up to be heroes or villains. It sets them up to be the underdog or the dominator, right? Like there are naturally huge comebacks. There's naturally big swings. It builds a natural momentum for a single player to make a game turning play. Dota back in the days had a lot more solo carry potential. You could have players like Sumail or Miracle go in and just straight fucking dominate 1v5 because the game was mega imbalanced. That's the truth. You can't do that anymore. Teams are too good. Players are too good. The game has been rebounced. Supports aren't just like one-shottable, and you can't just 1v5 get a rampage. But the downside is those players had way more opportunity to become natural hero and protagonists through the gameplay itself, and therefore make you more inclined to be a fan. Now, we can sit here and argue whether that's good or bad for the game. I don't want to debate that. That's a whole other debate. But I think that's my stance on it. And I think people feel like that's what's missing, but that's not because Miracle and Sumail did way more content and told their story than it. Like, brother,
No.
go find me a fucking content piece with Miracle in it that sold you on this guy. Go find it.
I'll tell you right now. Everybody right now is writing lower bracket is for bitches. Anything else?
Yeah, there's one line from a piece they didn't even fucking make. Valve made it against their will. Do you know how many of these players fought to like not have True Sight? The only reason True Sight got made is because Valve owned everything and they could just do it and say, fuck you, we're going to do it because we want to. If that were like a fucking PGL or an ESL at that time, it would never have been made. The players would have vetoed it. In fact, players have continually vetoed this shit. It took ESL years and years to eventually make their shit because players refused to do it.
Yeah.
So don't give me this bullshit that like Miracle is just some so charismatic that no player is charismatic.
He
as this
has
guy.
so much more personality, Avery,
Get the fuck
than
out
the
of
pros of today.
He might. You know what? He might, but we don't know because guess what? I never fucking saw it, and you never saw it. Nobody ever saw it. We had like 2 or 3 one-liners, and guess what? Your nostalgia brain and your brain that was conditioned based on his amazing gameplay that told an incredible story has conditioned you to then take those one-liners and fold them into the great narrative that was Miracle. And is it a great narrative? Yes, it's an amazing narrative. It's one of the best the game has ever seen, but it's not because he created it out of his charisma, content, and personality. It's because the gameplay helped create it. And that has what's changed, and that's what's been lost. And we don't have players like that. There's not these guys that can dominate to an extent that it automatically creates the storyline from them. It has to come from them directly. And I think Dota players have always been notoriously bad at that. And they've not rarely had incentives to do it as well. So I don't really blame them entirely. But like, give me a fucking break. I'm not saying that these guys didn't have great personalities. And I think there have been players from every generation that have had amazing personalities. Some of them we've seen, some of them we have not. Like I fucking lived with Sumail for 2.5 years. I lived with this guy. Okay. He's an amazing personality. Absolutely amazing. He's super charismatic. He says the funniest fucking shit. He's very outgoing in the right setting. He lives up to the hype that people bought into based on his gameplay. But I still argue that like not a lot of that ever got shown. EG did some content, some documentary stuff later in the time, but like he probably has less than 10, 15, 20 minutes total screen time across those series. Are they good clips? Do they endear you to his personality? Yes. But it's not like there's some mega documentary on this shit compared to modern players. Like there's no way Sumail has more screen time and content than a modern Liquid player, right? Or or OG player that got like some of those hour-long interviews like Taiga did, right? It's just not like that. There wasn't as much. So it had to come from somewhere else. And it was from the gameplay. Like Sumail is one of the most unique Dota players ever and played in one of the most unique eras with a style that dominated everybody. Of course you're going to love this guy. He had some of the most incredible games and TI performances of any player. He's one of the most TI dominating players of all time. Those TIs are the most nostalgic TIs for anybody. They are the most storyline driven TIs, not because of the content, because of the gameplay. Like if you ask someone, what do I remember about Sumail and why did I like him so much? They're going to tell you games and moments from games and things he did in the games. I've never talked to somebody and asked, like, I've never talked to someone and been like, oh, you're the biggest fan of Sumail Miracle? Why are you the biggest fan of Miracle? And they tell me something based on the content they watched or the personality.
I just love the neck pillow.
It's gameplay. It's gameplay. Yeah. I mean,
I love the time he walked out with a Make America Great Again hat, you know?
Yeah, that was, I mean, memes are memes. Like every player's going to have memes, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe you got sold on the memes. I mean, power to you, brother. But like, it's always some gameplay thing, right? It's like, oh, when Miracle had the fucking OD rampage 1v5. Oh, when Miracle made that blink out play with SF against the Warlock drop and then like killed the courier and lived. Oh, when fucking Sumail just dominated in 1TI and was like solo killing Shiki. Oh, when Sumail Storm Spirit entered the scene at DAC. Like, these are the thing. This is the storyline.
And I would argue that the other bits that make up some of these players, we're talking about like the biggest superstars right now, but I would say a lot of other players, uh, a lot of it's going to come down to the content that is made, and it's not them coming up with the idea. It's not them wanting to be in the content in the first place. A lot of the times, right? It's people like Slacks, people like Neil, people like Valve, who have made content scripted around them and in some ways force them to be in it, and it actually gives them a lot more personality. It's working off of a meme and extending the lore of the player further, and I would say so. Yeah, I think it like pretty much comes down to 90 to 95% of these players are just entirely made up of gameplay and the content that is made about them, but nothing from very few of them about what they do themselves. I would say some of the players who have actively gone and made and done things for themselves are actively shit on by the community because the things that they do are maybe a little toxic. Thinking, of course, of Amar, right? Amar has built up an entire name for himself as being somebody who's going to do all chat, and has created an entire all chat meta because of the things that he's done. All of a sudden, a lot more players are chiming in about this sort of thing. Emo, I think, is another good example of somebody who, the question mark is going to be, will live on forever in Dota, in part because him willing to do that in the moment that he did it, and the result that happened after he did that, then being able to make the comeback was, an incredible story.
I just think the reason people feel this way is just because the game has changed and the way the game tells a story now has changed. And so these modern players aren't going to tell the same level of story as these old protagonists that could 1v5. I think it's literally just that true. Like, Dota disabled this kind of function. And if you look at a lot of traditional sports, I think the same thing is true. Like, people know big superstars, or you become a superstar in traditional sports, not through the content, but through the gameplay. Like, your gameplay tells the majority of the story. And then once that happens, yes, people will build content around you and they'll dig deeper and find out why this guy existed. But nobody's watching a fucking 10-piece documentary on some dude who gets drafted in the NBA and scores 2 points a game. Like, brother, no one gives a shit. You can't make that story first before the guy delivers. Now, there are obviously rare exceptions. Like, LeBron had his story kind of told before he even went into that NBA and got built up. And then he ended up delivering on it, which is why it's such a rare case, because that almost never happens. A lot of times people invest in that story and it doesn't get delivered, and then it's like a dud. But it just doesn't really exist. And the modern public, if you're looking at a general public or the general Dota public that is related to that, like, most people don't really care. They're gonna follow stories that are based around the gameplay or why someone's super cool, and they don't really care to know more past that. You really have to elevate to a superstar status to get people engaged in what your story is beyond the game. Like, that's what I feel, at least in my experience. Always exceptions, but in general, that I think is the case. And I think it shows in Dota. Like, there's been a lot of people's stories told in Dota, and people will invest a lot of time and a lot of money to make hour-long documentaries on players, and like, you get 30K views on YouTube.
Yep.
It's like, okay, and then maybe that guy goes on to become super big, maybe he doesn't, but like, at the same time, then you have like a fucking Miracle highlight reel and it gets 1 million views. That's the story people care about. They're here to watch Dota and watch people make cool plays in Dota. They genuinely don't really care what your story is unless you get elevated to a superstar status. And even in those situations, if you're a Sumail who got elevated to a superstar status, what was the story that got promoted to mainstream media that when he was coming up that was big and that people remember? Kid from Pakistan who emigrated to the US, rags to riches type deal, right?
Yeah.
Is there truth in that? Sure. But is that like his actual story as a person, or the individual struggles he went to? And do you know anything really beyond that? Probably not, right? If I poll like 99% of Dota players, are they going to know anything beyond that basic story of Sumail? No. And he was a superstar level player at that time with an amazing story, um, as a person in his journey and whatever. And like, I don't know, that's just like kind of the truth. So there's not a lot of incentive for these guys to go out and tell major stories and content investment in their players, because
I hate
what do
the
they get for
argument
return?
that talent, particularly teams, are doing a bad job of selling their players. Because if you actually, lived in these times, you would know 100% teams are actually putting way more effort into selling their players. The problem is the incentives usually are not there. There are some exceptions, but I think one of the best examples of this, when it comes to what you're talking about and like what Dota fans want to watch versus maybe what other esports fans want to watch, um, ESL has done podcasts for Counter Strike for a little while now, and we also do them in Dota. Right, we record them at EWC specifically. Sometimes we'll do it for some other events. I've done a number of podcasts for our media days for ESL, where they get a group of players and maybe one talent. They sit down, have a conversation, um, and somebody actually linked this exact thing on the Counter-Strike side and said, Dota doesn't have anything like this. And it was linking to it's a conversation between Sponge and three of like the biggest in-game leaders in Counter-Strike at the current moment in time. And that video has over 500,000 views. They said, there's nothing like this. Well, first of all, there is something like that. We do the exact same thing in Dota. It's just, you haven't seen it, but it does exist. Second of all, PGL actually did do something like this and actually did get a lot of views for it. They had Kuro, No Tail, Puppy. I would argue that is the trio that would draw the absolute most attention with having a combination of personality, right? Veteranship and personality, right? All three of them are leaders. All three of them are going to be very insightful about the game and the history of the game, right? Maybe people would be more interested, if Miracle was on the podcast. But as we've talked about, Miracle probably isn't making the best podcast content in the world. So I would argue that is the absolute dream team of podcasts. And it actually did get attention, and it only has 250,000 views. And it's been out longer than the Counter-Strike video. It has half the views of the Counter-Strike video. And I would argue this Dota trio is more important to Dota's history than the trio that was on the Counter-Strike podcast. It just so clearly shows that the incentives are just much, much more diminished in Dota for this kind of content. And that's like when I say these sort of things, I remember we talked about it. We did the little Q&A, and I remember that was one of the things somebody put it on Reddit. And one of the things I said was that there really isn't that much incentive for like to do this sort of thing, right? To do the podcast. And I remember one of the more upvoted responses to that was, well, if the content was better, more people would watch. I'm like, I'm not gonna lie with that. Like that's probably true. If it was better, I wish I could make it better. There are a lot of things I wish I could do with the podcast to make it better. But frankly, there is an incentive for me to do that to make it better because, there people just aren't going to watch. And I think that shows where you have an in-studio podcast with the three biggest names, some of the three biggest names in Dota, and you get 250,000. There's no way that like off of that video, they made their money back for like maybe they made their money back for Puppy's flight. I don't know how expensive his flight is, but they actually probably cost them to make that piece of content, So I think I think it all just comes down to incentives, right? Dota fans, they don't want to watch this stuff, and that's okay. Like if that is what the reality is, that's okay. But let's not act like it is anything different. And I think obviously the biggest thing is what Valve has done with the esport, incentivize players to focus solely on the game and the culture that built up around TI, and TI is the only thing that matters, right? Content is so far down the list that, it had a lot of adverse effects. There was, I was talking to somebody about this defending the player side of things. And I thought what was really interesting was the what is it called, the poppy seed effect or whatever, like the tallest flower grows gets cut
Mhm.
down. I don't remember what that's called. Um, right? That was the culture in Dota, is that if you made content, you were looked at as a joke, that you were not a serious player, that you did not seriously approach the game. You were looked at as a secondary option when it came to teams and that sort of thing. Would you agree with that? That there was a culture that, because I remember that culture for sure. I remember looking at other content creators in that light. That like if you made content, you weren't being serious about being a pro player.
Yeah, that existed. I mean, if you're going to pick up someone for your team, are you going to pick up the guy who's grinding pubs 12 hours a day, or are you going to pick up the guy who's streaming 8 hours a day? Not even fucking close. Like, this streamer doesn't want to play pro. He wants to be a fucking streamer. So go stream.
Yeah. And even worse, like if you're a streamer, that's one thing. If you're something like a YouTuber, brother, fucking no.
Yeah, no
No,
shot. No shot.
absolutely not. Somebody like Speed is a great example. Like does fantastic YouTube content, is a pro player, you know. Like 10 years ago that guy would have been looked at as a joke, you know. Just because there was this weird cultural thing of just like, you know, it was the same as like the really early days of like pub players, you know. Oh, MMR doesn't really mean anything, you know. Pub players, it's entirely different when you're playing professionally, when you're playing competitive Dota, right? It's an entirely different game than, you know, playing the pubs. You could be a good pub player, but it doesn't mean you're going to be a good pro player, you know. And that culture may have some kernel of truth to it, but it certainly went way too far. So yeah, I think the incentives have clearly made it so that, you know, teams and players are just not really, they've never been pushed to do this sort of thing. And it's just natural what has happened. It's not, it's, you know, I do blame the players and I'll blame some of the talent too, even. You know, I think everybody could do a lot better in this regard, but ultimately we're talking like, if it is a player's fault, is it the TO's fault? Is it the team's fault? Is it the talent's fault? Like, that's fighting over like the 5 to 10%. The baseline of all this is 80 to 90% of it just comes from everything that built up around the esports scene and what TI was, I think.
I mean, I'll say two quick things. One, if I'm going to go make content now and I want to make content that gets the most viewership over the short term and the long term, I am not doing anything with fucking players.
Mm.
No fucking way. What am I doing? I'm doing one of two things: straight memes or straight gameplay type shit. Like, I'm doing highlights, or I'm doing educational video content, or I'm doing pro replay analysis or something in that vein that is just gameplay, or I'm doing memes, right? And if you look at the successful YouTubers that exist in Dota, after a long time of people coming and going and trying different stuff, I'd argue Jenkins was very successful. He's a straight meme lord, right? Herald reviews, random, garbage meme fest, whatever.
Tier lists are
Yeah,
like a
tier
nice
lists.
meme slash, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
analytical content.
Like joke strategies, right? The Pudge Sniper type shit, where you play a joke game. It's like lol, and MLG4, MLG 360 no scope bullshit. Or you're doing educational stuff. I think Kezu's YouTube channel has gotten some 250,000 view videos off like, here's 8 minutes of why you're losing the lane, you should win it more. Those are the things people watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can get
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of views doing this stuff, like a lot of views, and do really well. And you're gonna get, like, Kezu can make a 10-minute video on laning and get the same viewership that the podcast with Puppy Curl and No Tail gets. Now, are there differences that can make one of those a lot better or one a lot worse or whatever? Yeah, maybe, but like, come on. You look at the general viewership of what people are going to spend their time and energy on in Dota over the last 10 years. It's fucking hats, it's memes, and it's gameplay, baby. That's it. Like, that's what you're selling, because that's what people are buying. And the same thing exists in other sports too. Like, there's really good educational content on traditional sports or competitive scenes in a lot of spaces, and it's just not consumed at the same rate. And the same arguments exist, dude. Like, I go on the fucking NBA subreddit, and there's people complaining all the time that there's not enough educational NBA content made. It's the same exact arguments, dude. And it's because there are really good educational NBA content creators. I watch some of them. They're super good, very well edited, very well thought out, articulated, really good points. And they just get marginal views compared to the guy who makes the like WWE SmackDown meme fest about, LeBron dunking on people's nutsack. So like it's just tough. It's a tough era to compete in because you're competing with all these TikTok short content pieces that are appealing to the ADHD brain that latch you on very quickly and get 100,000 views for a 10-second clip. The time, energy, and cost investment to make educational content is monumentally higher. The cost, time, energy to get people on a podcast monumentally higher compared to this stuff, right? So it's a tough arena to compete in.
Yeah.
There was something else I was going to say, and I forgot after ranting about all that.
It's okay. I'll throw something in. Maybe you'll remember. I would add that Counter-Strike stickers are a good example of like this. Everybody points to the CS scene as like how much better they are with content. I would that everything that built up around stickers and what they both good and bad do for that game. Stickers is one of those things that also incentivizes players and teams heavily. My understanding is they don't do quite as well as they used to, but we're talking about like millions of dollars are being made off of sticker money when you are able to qualify to the major. And so if you have an individual brand, if you have a team brand, just qualifying for the major can get you a ton of money. And we don't really have anything like that in Dota, and I actually don't think anything like that will ever exist. I think the closest thing, Valve actually did a good job of coming up with the concept of voice lines, but unfortunately, they become less and less valuable. When they were first in, they were unique. Over time, they're just gonna lose and lose more and more value. You're just not gonna make as much money as you used to. And I think it was a cool idea, and it was great for some talent and stuff, but players specifically, right now we have these team bundles. I'm sure the players maybe get some sort of cut. I doubt it's a large cut, but I'm sure they get some sort of cut off this. But I highly doubt the team bundles are going to be making that much money in the first place. So there's really, again, TI is something, but then also there isn't a modern individual incentive for being known in Dota, for going out of your way and doing shit like Saberlight does. Saberlight's, I think, a fantastic example of a modern day pro player who has a ton of personality and actively goes out of his way to showcase that personality, makes content, tries when he makes content, and he gets more fans as a result. But does that, him having those extra 10,000 fans, actually do anything for him? In Dota, I don't think it actually translates to a whole lot, unless you are to retire and go into talent afterwards. That's the only time it actually makes a difference. And I would argue you could probably just wait to do that once you actually retire. You get a jump start if you're well known as a pro player, but frankly, Avery was not a particularly outgoing media personality as a pro player.
That's why I got dirt on people. That was my exit strategy. Accumulate dirt, black my way into the cabal. Successful mission.
And you basically, in my opinion, I feel like you kind of started from the bottom as a talent, and all the work that you did and all the personality that you showed, you actually grew a lot of fans as a result. And now you're experiencing this success. But I would argue there was very little foundation for you as a player outside of the fact that you were a pro player and you were a captain. Right? Like, oh, this guy, I respect what he's talking about. He's telling me good things about Dota because I know he was a pro player and a captain.
There's still people who don't know who the fuck I am. There's still people who hate me. Like every time we cast a tournament, there's some guy like, who the fuck is this dumbass on the screen? It's like, brother, I've been in the scene 10 years. Who the fuck are you? That always amazes me. Someone can come in a tournament and not know who we are. Not that we're so big, but it's like, what the fuck have you been watching for 10 years? Like you must have seen us at least once, right?
I'll tell you what they've been watching. They've been watching 2016 Miracle highlight videos for the last 10 years.
Well, guess what, motherfucker? I'm probably in some of those because he was dunking on my ass. So like, you still saw my terrible Dota playing ass.
Well, you shouldn't have changed your name. That was a problem. They're confusing LOA.
I destroyed all my
SVG,
branding, my 5,000 Twitter followers.
Yeah.
The last thing I was going to say is I think in these arguments, people always point to TrueSight. TrueSight is the last bastion of like, well, Valve created this content. It's got millions of views and it's fucking amazing. And they showed you can do it and no one else can. And that's where I go back to the argument of Valve created that because they thought the storylines would be interesting because of the situation that teams were being put in. Valve did not go into those making that content because they thought the personalities were good to make content around.
Well,
In fact,
okay, wait. Rewind. The original free to play. My understanding was that they were filming with some players, and that they found there was like, oh, there's actually some really interesting
yeah,
stories
that is
here.
different. That is different.
That is different. But yes, everything that
Um,
followed after that, yes, keep
Obviously,
going.
they're making these because they do think there's personality there. Like they don't think these
Yeah,
guys are dead robots. But part of the idea behind TrueSight and why it would be successful is that TI created an environment that was incredibly high stress, incredibly do or die, end all be all the entire year. You're playing for $50 million, whatever the fuck it is. It's life changing. This environment is going to create a insane storyline, particularly in the finals, no matter who is in there. And then if we get people that have personality on top, whoever the fuck it is, you're going to have some good content, right?
yeah.
After a
Valve is
lot of editing.
intentionally amping up the pressure that they put on the
Yes.
players for TI, and they understood that pressure cooker would get some really interesting stories and reactions out of any human being.
Yep. And they 100% understood that. And some of the decisions that Valve made for the TI format and stuff were designed to fucking do that. I don't know if if the community really knows that, but that is the truth. Like I think the community has kind of been mixed on BO1s on the TI main stage around like the TI5 to TI9 era. Those were there because they created a cool storyline of TI, baby. That was it. It wasn't about like fair format or giving like motherfucker. Those BO1s eliminations were do or die. That created an insane storyline. Valve wanted it there. Um, so like this true sight is born out of both of those things. And when you remove one of those, which is basically what's happened, the TI storyline is not going to be that same pressure cooker, high intensity, insane Cinderella story, $10 million winner as it used to be. You remove a lot of that potential. And I'm not saying you couldn't still make a true sight and have it be very good. I think it would be very good. And I think you would have a lot of people watch it. But these things are tied in together. And like you can't just say, I'm ESL, I'm PGL, and I'm going to create a true sight equivalent because the truth is your tournament and your finals and your innate storylines based off the gameplay and the environment itself are not as good. So you have to compensate with even more personality or some like insane Cinderella story or something to get the same level of engagement out of a casual viewer. And that's really difficult. Really difficult in esports when the people are not naturally going to be like that. Really difficult when you're working across language barriers. Really difficult when you're also trying to run the event and you're not like a third party who's solely focused on that. Really difficult when you're probably limited by budget and costs, and these things take a lot of editing. Like we're talking about hundreds of hours of editing for something like TrueSight. Um, and editing done by people who understand Dota, very difficult to find, right? Like you can't just throw random fucking video editors in here who don't know anything about the game because
No.
it'll be completely unusable. So like there's very few people you can draw from. You need Dota expert in there. You need a video editor in there. You need to combine them. You need to produce a good storyline. You need people to do translation. You need to weed out a lot of the stuff you would want to use because you can't use it because guess what? Players say a lot of uncomfortable and non PG shit.
A
Big
lot of
surprise,
racial
I know.
slurs have been
Yeah.
cut out of these free to play videos. Yeah.
Yeah, it's no secret. So like sometimes you can film it, have a great story, and guess what? You can't use half of it. Um, there's a lot of things. And so, and then you do all this and you post it, and you get like 30K views. You're like, what the fuck? Like, fuck this shit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
TI helped amp that up because you had a baseline where you knew you were going to get a good story. You might not get a great one, you might not get a fantastic one, but you knew at least you were going to get a really good one just because of the event and the environment and the stress levels and whatever. And then it's whatever personalities and one-liners and memes you got on top of that. And that's why those were so good. And I don't think it's fair to be like, well, TrueSight did it, why can't other people do it? Because it's just not this, like it's not fair to compare it. Like you're not going to get the same storyline if you go film a swim team at the fucking Olympic finals as you do filming them at their high school meet. That's just
Yeah.
not how storytelling works in sports. So I think you have to recognize how the game has changed in terms of storytelling, how the environment's changed in terms of storytelling, how the competitive scene has changed, And all these factors affect the storytelling, from an individual player like Miracle to a team trying to tell the biopic of their players to a production company like an ESL or PGL or Valve trying to tell the story of a tournament. Those all get affected, and it lowers the innate hype level and engagement level of all of those that you have to make up for elsewhere. And that's really difficult to do. Like, really difficult to do. So,
Yeah, I think a really good example, one name that I left off the list is an older name, but there was I actually worked with him for a grand total of 1 week at Join Dota. Moose, um, Moritz Zimmerman. He was a prolific video maker, esports film producer. The videos that he made, you will know, he made some amazing documentaries on players. He's what was the major? It's not True Sight, but like, what was they called it a different series when they did it for the majors, where they did little mini player documentaries on. They called it something else. I don't remember what it was, but he did a number of those contracted for Valve, and I remember like he has recorded stuff because he is a passionate Dota fan and he loves the game and he loves the players and all these sorts of things. And I know he has recorded footage for this sort of thing, but number of times that there's just not the budget. He isn't able to make the stories that he wanted to make at some point in time. I don't know if he still wants to, but he wasn't able to make some of the stories he wanted to make because there just wasn't money there. There wasn't the backing, and probably because there wouldn't be the results to be able to get enough views to make it all worth it. So yeah, good example of what you're talking about there. On this topic, I also, in this conversation that I had, I've been told that content is a meat grinder for current Dota 2 esports, because all of these orgs do make content, despite what the subreddit will tell you. They do make content, and they make a good amount of it. So every single time these players go to a boot camp, 1 or 2 days is going to be making content. Every single tournament they go to, they're going to be making content. And we have a lot of tournaments over the course of the year. So there is also a factor of just fatigue, and it's getting ground out of the players. And they don't really have much incentive to try for this sort of thing. Because as we've already illustrated, like you get an extra 10,000 fans, it doesn't really make a difference monetarily. So, yeah, just sort of the scene as it is. But we'll wrap it up on the post that I alluded to at the very start. The response post to has Pro Dota lost its personalities? Quote, has Pro Dota lost its personalities? Kind of, but it's not the player's fault. And this person went on a long list to wrote an essay about Tundra, with the overall story being that here's the things that the players, Valve, the teams, and the tournament organizer, which again is Valve, wouldn't tell you because they just didn't care or didn't know about these things about the players, and describe the story of Tundra, which I have to say is hats off to this person. They made one of the most quintessential Dota posts I've ever seen in my life, which is just an essay of shadowboxing and just making shit up. As all of these things that he listed say, they forgot this team started off as Mud Golems and was the first team to end Team Secret's tournament win streak during the pandemic. Avery, did you know that the Team Tundra, they were used to be called Mud Golems the previous year?
It was a different roster.
It was a little bit of a different roster, but some of the core was there.
Yeah, I think it had 3 of the 5.
Yeah,
very original. But yes.
Yeah. Did you forget that happened when you were doing the casting of Tundra and talking about their story?
Did I cast them at that? I don't think I casted them.
I don't know. I don't think we really casted Tundra, to be fair. But I know for a fact there were talent that did bring this thing up. I remember very clearly them talking about the fact that Resolution and Soxa were in a TI final together. But this post will claim that that was never brought up. And that's why the story about Tundra is so bad, is because the talent and the tournament organizer and the teams did a bad job of selling it. All this shit, like 90% he wrote in this post is like stuff that like I'll put money down that that was in the broadcast of TI at some point in time. It was brought up. People don't care.
Well,
It didn't stick in people's minds, and
there's two parts
that
of
is
that.
what
I
it
mean,
is.
one is it was brought up. I do remember a lot of these points being brought up. There is somewhat of a valid point that they can be brought up in a good way and a bad way, right? Like they can be brought up
Sure.
as random factoids that don't lend anything to the story building. They can be brought up in a way that does lend a lot of credence to story building and formalized over the course of a tournament, even maybe in a 30-second content piece, in a special side segment that draws your attention to it. There are ways that it can be done better. I do think Tundra's story at that event could have been told better for sure, but I think that's probably true a lot of the time. Um, and I do think a lot of those points were brought up. Now, you can argue that maybe they weren't communicated in the way you think could have told that story the best, and I could, I could buy that debate, and I think that's a fair one.
Sure.
But to say that none of it was brought up is unfair. So I don't know. I don't really know what to make of that. It's tough. I feel like sometimes people hear what they want to hear, and they are very good at hearing what they want to hear out of people that they either like or they don't like. For example, I know we've casted stuff where I've literally told stories about players I have played with during the cast, like personal stories or stories
Yeah.
about them and their career. I have done this with Snaking from that Tundra squad multiple
Sure.
fucking times. I have told stories about things that he has literally said verbatim that were you're not going to hear anywhere else. Like it was like me, him, and two other people in the room, and those two other people aren't doing the fucking cast. So like, you're
Mhm.
not going to hear this anywhere. Like I've told shit like that, and then I have seen like comments that like I don't know these players at all, and I have like no personal experience to share about them. Like, okay, I
And
mean,
I would argue I'm biased here, obviously, but I do think you're a pretty good storyteller.
yeah, I'm
Like, I
sure.
think
Okay,
you
maybe I
do a good
fucking
job of
butchered
getting
it.
laughs and
you
stuff out of it.
maybe I fucking butchered it in the moment.
Sure.
But the point is, like, that person who thinks I don't know anything. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, because if you think I don't know anything, no one else knows anything more. So, like, either I'm just the worst fucking conveyor of information of all time, which is fair. If you think that, okay, you just hate me, and that's cool. And maybe there's some truth in it. I work hard to improve that. But the other more likely outcome is that you just don't like me.
Or you don't like the player that much.
Or
And
you
you
don't
don't
like the
find
player,
the story
or
that
you weren't
interesting
really
because
paying
they're
attention and you just have a vendetta, right? And it's like, those are all fine. Like, I don't have anything against that. You can hate people, but then don't go like spread misinformation that I don't know what I'm talking about, or
Yeah.
I don't have any personal experience with these guys. And maybe there is nobody in the scene who has enough deep personal experience for you to go like, that guy knows, right? Maybe, which is I think a lot of the case, a lot of time, Dota players put a lot more credence in the people that they like, or they have faith that they know what they're talking about, and they don't put credence in the people that they don't have faith or don't think they know what they're talking about. I'll post this question out here as we finish this podcast. Do you think the average random Dota viewer is more inclined to think a point made by the average panelist, um, throw out any of these names? I don't want to throw out an individual name because people are going to think I'm like vendetting them or something, but like, if Cinderin makes a point, or BSJ makes a point, or Effie makes a point, or Kezu makes a point on a panel, right? Is the average Dota viewer more inclined to instantly buy into that point and go, yeah, that was smart. These guys know what they're talking about. I wouldn't have thought about that. Or are they more inclined to buy into the exact same point made by Puppy, Seb, Kuro, No Tail, PPD?
Yeah.
And we all know the fucking answer to this. Like, we may
Yeah.
not like it, but we know the fucking answer on average. And that's what you're kind of up against as a Dota talent. Obviously, I have like some pro player experience, so I'm somewhere in the middle of there, but I feel like I still fall in the category because there's people who watch me who don't know I ever played and are just viewing me as a caster. And it's like, this guy is gonna not listen to what I have to say, or he's not even gonna hear the fucking story. And it's the same thing with, I guarantee something happened with this guy with that TI with Tundra. Like, there's people who just ignore what the fucking panelists say. And then after the event, they're like, why didn't they say any of this shit? Like, I heard Seb up there that one time he was on panel, because that's the only time I tuned in and actually listened to the dude, because I respect and listen to Seb, which is fine. Seb's amazing. He's an amazing player, amazing curator, amazing charismatic guy. But like, I know for a fact that a lot of the stuff Seb said at that event was very good and spot on. But there are other people on those panels who said similar things. I'm not taking away from what he said, but like, that's just the truth. Like, there's only panelists do make very good points a lot of times, but there's an innate bias against them because they're not pro players. And guess what? Dota players respect Dota players. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Like, the Dota
I think
players
this is
only
obviously a
respect-
problem in every sport and esport, but I do think it is particularly bad in Dota. And I think it's just the fact that Dota is, first of all, it's a very elite game, right? Dota fans are very elitist in that regard. They like to correlate intelligence to, MMR and, your success in Dota. Let's put it that way. And it's also a game that is largely strategic and based off of knowledge. And so therefore, they put a particularly heavy emphasis on those things. And therefore, pro players must be the ones to have the most. And so, yeah, I do think that is always kind of there.
And then, you know what? To add another final point here, whenever I fucking tell stories about the players that I have lived with for years and played with and know a lot about, I get called fucking biased because I know more about them than the other side. So like,
Yeah.
I can't fucking win. If I don't say anything, I have no extra information to add to the broadcast. If I do use my extra information that I have learned from talking to these guys and playing with them and talking to them outside of events, or talking to them at dinner tables or lunch tables in events and asking them about their experience, right? And I'm bringing that into the broadcast, I get called fucking biased and that, like, oh, I'm just sucking this team's dick instead of the other team. This happened for a year and a half when Gaiman was winning, and I happen to know a lot about Quinn and Gaiman and some of the guys on that team and their story. And like, somehow this is making me a biased broadcaster instead of, oh, this guy has extra information to bring to the cast. That accusation would not happen to like potential bigger personalities by the same people. I'm not complaining, but like, you also have to recognize that, like, I think about this stuff. The average panelist or caster thinks about this stuff and is also up against it. Some of these in a little bit of a degree, and there's just always, I don't know, man. Like, the vocal minority in Dota is just really fucking annoying, to be honest. They just complain about fucking everything. I have never seen anything in the history of Dota in the last 15 years that the vocal minority, in some capacity, did not complain about. Go find me any event that has happened that did not have a vocal minority that complained about it. Valve literally gave out free hats with Quadro or whatever the fuck his name is. People complained about it. Like, the year they gave out free Immortals. Here's just free Immortals. That was it. People complained about it. There will always be somebody complaining about something, and that's the reality of life, I think. And like, I've come to terms with it. I think a lot of people have come to terms with it. But brother, you're playing a free video game that you get a lot of free hats during, that there's free events, there's free entertainment. At some point, just give it up, man. Just accept that this is what we have and enjoy it, and offer constructive criticism if you want to, but don't be a fucking dick, because we're 20 years into this thing, and like, 20 years of your life, it's a long time to spend invested in something. And I get that. And I try and respect that investment and deliver like the best product I can. Like, I really do try hard. At the same time, you got to give up a little bit of the like critical energy that is ruining your life because you're stressed about this thing that you don't have control over, and none of us really have control over. I don't have fucking control over it. Austin doesn't have control over it. Like, we are just pawns in this fucking great game of Dota. Like, we're just trying to give you some fun and entertainment. That's it. I have no other incentive. I genuinely have no incentive in my job other than I just want to make it fun for people watching. I'm not here to like try and teach you everything. I'm not here to lecture you. I'm not here to promote Valve or promote Gaming Gladiators because my friend Quinn is on it, or promote fucking Tundra because my friend Snake. Like, I don't have a single incentive other than to deliver the best product entertainment wise, whatever that is. That's it. That's it, man. And I guarantee you, in my saying that, there's going to be some guy who's like, that's just not true. So what the fuck can I do to convince him? Nothing. So we're just all going to move on and enjoy Dota for whatever it delivers us. And that's life. That's life. I don't know what the fuck my end point here is, but To the haters out there, fuck you. To the fans, I appreciate it. And to the guys in the middle who are like, what's this stupid bald guy ranting about for an hour? Thanks for watching the podcast. Like and subscribe at the bottom. Buy my voice line. I appreciate your efforts there, brother.
uh, there's two things. I wanted to wrap this up on the final sentence here of this Reddit post. Writes this essay. See, it took me, a random Redditor, on a Saturday afternoon, 10 minutes to write up a storyline that could probably resonate with you. But Valve, the production, and the talents apparently didn't care enough to do it. I think that self-assured smugness after a post that is 90% bullshit, because all of this is under the context that they never told you this, they didn't know, they didn't care, whatever. I think that really encapsulates the Reddit Dota community by a lot. A lot. I will say, though, I do agree with the general concept that we could do more. And the problem is that the incentives aren't really there. The financial incentives aren't really there. You kind of get what you get as the community. You get what you deserve in a way. And so if you like certain things, but the majority of the community doesn't like certain things, then you're not going to get that. And so when people ask for better content and stuff like that, that is a result entirely of incentives. Now,
That's
I
what I'm
will
saying,
say,
man. Like a majority of Dota players don't like some of these things. Like as much as I want to see, a certain movie come out, like as much as I want to see a them not make if I don't want to see them make a fucking sequel to Gladiator. But if they make the sequel to Gladiator and it sells a fucking $1 billion, obviously they're gonna fucking make it, despite
yeah,
my wishes of them ruining a great original movie. So sometimes you have to accept what the majority or the minority is pulling for in these cases, and like the market dictates stuff a little. It's not a passion project for us.
I will link this all the way back though to the players. I think everybody can do a better job. Um, Again, the incentives are not there to do so, but I will say there is a different kind of incentive, which is we are a community. And I think that the community that built up the pro players to make as much money as they did and the talent to make as much money as we do and that sort of thing. I do think that there is something. I understand that there is maybe not an incentive for you to do so as a player, and that there is maybe not an incentive for you to do extra stuff as a talent and stuff, but I do think you should still do it because ultimately you should be grateful for the position that you're in and the community that built that all up, and you should try and give back to the community as much as you can. And so I do agree with some of the criticisms that talent could do more. 100% agreed. I think talent could do better. People can always do better, but I do think, specifically that Dota talent could do a lot better, particularly in the content front. I think it's a little embarrassing that no Dota talent makes any sort of interview content with pro players whatsoever. There may not be the incentive for it, but somebody should probably be doing it. Somebody should probably be doing this sort of thing. I do think that players, understand that you're in a meat grinder and you have to do content after every tournament and all this sort of thing. But like, you make a lot of fucking money. Just try. When Slacks comes up to you, because Slacks works really fucking hard to make this content and stuff, and Slacks asks you to do some sort of content or something, please just try. Just give him some trust. He's been doing it for so long, and he's made so many players look good as a result of the talent, the content that he's made, both himself and then tied into Valve and other tournament organizers. Like, just trust him. Just try. Just buy into it. Just have some fun with it. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, I've been in a lot of his content. I did it for free, man. It's only hurt my public image. So
that's true.
think about that.
That's true.
I would make more content if I didn't have severe crippling depression from the 20 years I've been playing this game. That's my excuse.
Dota took its toll on Avery.
Yeah, I mean, I paid a steep price. The fact I'm here at all is like, that's something else, dog. I don't know. I'm grateful for that,
Yeah, if anything, Avery's trying to get back some of what he gave. He's like, I gave so much
Yeah,
of my life and my mental. Like, give me something more. You owe me more money for what I gave
someone should be
you.
doing content for me. Okay, I shouldn't even be on this podcast. Like, someone should be making a podcast for me, and I should be getting just a check in the mail. Like, goddamn, I gave a lot of years to this game. I got a lot back, but Some of those were rough, dog. Like, I ain't gonna lie, those COVID years, those are rough. Those are.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway, yeah.
Thank you very much for watching. Feel like that's probably a good moment to end on this hour and almost 40-minute podcast. That one guy who said he wants longer episodes, this one is for you. You got a doozy. We will be back next week. I'm going to make this outro as long as possible so Avery keeps on having to wave goodbye. We'll make next week, we will do the predictions. I know some of you guys who are probably tuning in, hoping to be able to get some insight. The best predictions you could possibly hope to be able to get those sweet, sweet hats. The purple hats. If you want to get all of the purple hats you possibly can get, we will give them to you on the next episode with all our insights on the fantasy and the predictions for this TI. You're not going to get a better source, analytical source of this than this podcast right here. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.